Welcome to the Church Brand Guide podcast. My name is Michael Persad. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Evangelistic Center and how they rebranded themselves in the last 3 to 4 years to now be this church that is just a leader in the community, a thought leader even within their own community through the changes they've made in the rebrand. Several years ago, they found themselves in a place of decline, but now through these changes and just rebranding themselves, they have this great energy and a youthful culture that has been cultivated through the change where they've got a lot of momentum as a result of it. So we're talking with Justin Vaughn today. He is the son of Bishop Jack Vaughn, and Justin's going to help us begin to unpack how this change took place and how Bishop Jack Vaughn was able to help the church get on board with the change, because change is always tough, but they were able to do this very effectively. They were able to move their budgets around and stop doing certain things so that they could focus on these branding changes that we wanted to make. And the first things that we did were on the branding side of things. So we changed a lot of visual things. The facility was updated with signage. The website was updated. The logo was updated. And then they were able to put actions behind it, starting initiatives and reaching out into community, doing community events. And so we begin to unpack how this looked for them to help them rebrand over these last several years. So Justin's going to talk with us today, and hopefully this provides great inspiration and even some kind of step-by-step type of things that you might be able to do if you're thinking about the same thing within your church culture. So let's get right to it and welcome Justin Vaughn to the Church Brand Guide podcast. Thanks for joining me today on the Church Brand Guide podcast. Today I'm excited to have our guest in with us. He actually has been working with me for quite a while over the last several years to help rebrand his church. And actually, it's his father's the pastor, the bishop of the church, and then Justin has been working with us to help Bishop Vaughn to begin to move in a new direction. So we're going to unpack how that's gone. So I'm really excited about this episode because we can get a good inside view of what a rebrand looks like and has looked like for this church that's located in the inner city of Kansas City. So Justin, welcome to the podcast today. I'm glad you're here to join us.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
All right. Excellent. So we're going to get to know you a little bit. So what's your story? Just tell me a little bit of your background.
Well, let's see. I often tell people that I was kind of born into what I do, being that my father, Bishop Jack C. Vaughn, the pastor of Evangelistic Center, which is the church that I'm working with and that I attend. My grandfather started the church, and it was handed down to my father. So as a infant, I had no other choice but to either I was an usher in the church, I was parking cars, or I was doing something involved in ministry. So it's always been in me. I just didn't know it was quite big as a passion as it has become until later on in life. So, I went to college with the purpose of equipping myself with the tools that I thought that would help the ministry. So I got my human resource degree from Kansas State University and went on to pursue my master's in business administration. Directly following that, my profession, as I like to say, by day is healthcare administration, but by night it's and throughout the day full-time ministry for the church.
Gotcha. So you're Batman.
Yeah, right. Renaissance men of different sorts. So yeah.
So that is really cool. So your father is the bishop of Evangelistic Center. His father before him was the bishop, and then so it's been a couple generations. You're kind of the third generation stepping into the role as in leadership of the church.
Right.
And so why don't you paint a picture for our audience of what the church was like? You came on about 5 years ago and started to step more into a leadership role, but paint a picture of what the church was like before you started working with them.
Okay. Originally, my role was more in the finances. So I came in finance, and I was just a general counter. We had a gentleman who was Deacon George Fields, who kind of molded me, what I would say, in ministry as far as the business aspect of the ministry, and took me under his wing. He obviously saw something in me that he thought would be beneficial. So I was still am in the background in sorts, but I was really in the background at that time, just kind of watching him, looking at the different accounting aspects. And from then on, he began, still molded me, and he began to get ill, and he passed away. So then it the mantle kind of landed on me, so to speak. And that's when I stepped into a major leadership role. But being in that role, what I started to see was, started to take a different focus or a different scope of the ministry. So instead of being so focused on one area of ministry, which was finances, kind of start to let my passion drive me to other areas and start to look at where were we at as a ministry in whole. So what was the temperature of the ministry? What was the heartbeat? And what did I see when I looked out in the audience on a Sunday or a Tuesday when we gathered for worship? And what I started to see was that, we were the same church that we were when I was in high school, so to speak. So my viewpoint on that was everything around us is changing, but the church is remaining the same. So the congregation started to get a little bit older. And so we have those, you have those stable people in your congregation who are going to be there. I mean, they're pillars in the congregation, but you have those young adults who will kind of gauge what I like to say the future of the church. Gauge the longevity of it, and I started to see that waver. So that's when I really started to hone in, okay, what's going on here? Why are we seeing a decrease in the young adults, which again, I like to refer to as the vital signs. Our vital signs were not good at all. So our church was very traditional, and that's what I started to hone in on, was that you can't be traditional and innovative at the same time. So something has to give in that aspect. And if we're traditional, we weren't appealing to a younger audience, which if we don't appeal to that younger audience, then we're not going to have that longevity that we need to have. We're basically a dying church is how I saw it. So that's when I really started to hone in on, okay, what strategy or what strategic things can we do to start to change the direction of this ship and kind of turn it around, so we're more progressive and not so traditional.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with you several years ago and discussing that kind of idea. I think we joked about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, when and this is for, or really anyone, if you look out into your congregation and the biggest percentage of your church is of the let me say an older age or a more seasoned age, to me, that's not a good vital sign for your church, because those parishioners are in the kind of the last years of their life. So if you don't have someone to pass the torch, so to speak, and someone that is coming along in ministry, then you have a dying ministry, because you're hanging the future of your ministry on the hat of parishioners that have a certain timeline themselves. So we needed to figure out a way to inject a younger audience to kind of help that out, so that the funerals were not dictating the future of the church, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, babies were being born too. So
right.
You grow. And, No, it's sad, but it's true. There's a lot of churches in that same boat where if you don't change, eventually you're going to find yourself in a decline. So you have to have this ability to change. And I think that's unique about what you guys have done. This church has been around for a long time, and there's a lot of people that really, really like what they had. And then you came along and you started to implement change. Mm-hmm. So can you talk about maybe how that was received as you began to change some things?
Yes, I had to. It took some time, and the first, I won't say obstacle, but the first kind of, well, let's say barrier that I had to get through was my father, Bishop Vaughn. So he was very comfortable with the way things were. Not to say that anything was wrong with that, but no one had ever come along to challenge the status quo of where we were. So he was receptive, but yet and still at the same time hesitant to, I appreciate my youngest son being passionate about ministry, but hold off a second, because you want to change a lot of things that I'm used to. The first conversation and major change that we made was our presence on the radio, and the certain broadcast that we were on. It was a gospel radio station, which radio is fine if it's used effectively, but we had been on there, since my grandfather was pastoring. So we had been for years and years, and it was just something that, People were used to hearing Dad Vaughn and at that time Elder Jack Vaughn on the radio giving those words of encouragement, and you had this younger generation coming along saying that we need to come off of this, and that was one of the first kind of triumphant battles, let me say, for me was to do that. But I had to show the pros and the cons, and I think the key to change is you have to, especially the key points of leadership, present the change, but show the benefit of the change. And because it's, often if you can present the benefit in the way that outweighs what the attachment is to the old and kind of weigh the cons. And if I can present in a certain type of way that makes it attractive, then if you get leadership buy-in, then it's often easier to get the rest of the support cast to buy into you. So, we eventually came off the radio, and my kind of approach to that was this money can be used on live streaming. Versus having this select audience that is listening to a gospel radio station. And, this audience, more than likely, they're not younger adults for this station. So they're the older Christians that are more stable and have probably have a church home already that they're going to on Sundays. Let's broaden our audience to people that really may need to hear it. So basically, let's not take water to the ocean. Let's take it to the desert. So let's figure out how can we get water to those people who may not go to church on Sunday. How can we use these dollars to really do ministry work in that aspect? So we came off the radio and we started streaming, and our audience was very slow at first. I mean, you have to get the word out there on the streaming, but when he started to see, and I made sure I gave him updates, we're up to this many people, and this is the kind of resources that it is bringing in, because the radio wasn't bringing in resources because we weren't using our monies effectively. So once he starts seeing the kind of benefit of that, and people saying, well, I was able to watch you on live stream, and we're getting people from Arizona and Mexico and all of these different countries and states tuning in. Then he said, wow, I'm really reaching all of these people with the same amount of dollars that I was using just to reach a few people in Kansas City and the surrounding area.
Yeah, man. So you basically were showing your father the results.
Right.
So you talked to him about having some change, and then you were sure that you made sure that he saw the results of the change. I think that's great. I'm trying to think of somebody else in your shoes. Maybe it's the son of another bishop that's out there, or pastor, and they could see the need for change. Or maybe it's just somebody else. Usually it's a younger generation, and there's an older generation ahead of them, and maybe the older generation is complacent in some way. What would be the advice, the word of advice that you might give to that young leader that sees that there's a need for a change?
The first thing I would say is not to give up on your vision for what you see. It was strong enough in me that I knew it was right, and I couldn't let it go. But I also could not let my passion for it overshadow the strategic steps that I needed to take. So I had to, pray for wisdom in how to deal with the change and how to implement and present the change. So I would say start small. I think the important thing with change, although change may be positive, if it's done the wrong way, then it can have a negative impact. So to start small, because it's important if you're presenting change to me, if you start small, I can see the results. If you try to do everything at once, it's too overbearing. And you also, you get a lot of pushback. And I've seen that even in my professional career, that if change is done wrong, then you're necessarily going to get pushback. And if you get that pushback once, it's often hard to come back from that. So to start very small, and what I like to, and I got this from Andy Stanley, actually, the breadcrumbs, and I just kind of use it in a different scenario, but start small with the breadcrumbs so they see that, okay, this is working, and then they start to get excited about what's next. So it makes it easier for you to implement different change because they bought into what your passion was at first and what your vision was. And once you get them to buy into a few things and they see the positive results, and then you really have them locked in, and it's a lot easier from there.
Very good. And to Bishop Vaughn's credit, we've been working with him. So we have a very unique privilege of, we're in the area. I work with you on different projects. So we'll go out on a video shoot with Bishop Vaughn. I remember one of the recent shoots we did. We made Bishop Vaughn walk all these stairs. We went to this big monument in Kansas City. And the video was about, taking the stairs or something like that. And we had him walk a lot of stairs. And Bishop Vaughn, he doesn't completely grasp the why behind what we're doing, but he just trusts you. Mm-hmm. And I could see that. He was just like, it's fine. I'll walk these stairs. I'll do it because I know that Justin has a plan. Mm-hmm. And he trusts you. So over that period of time, you really developed a big reservoir of trust.
Yes, and I think I don't think I know that he was able to see my passion for ministry, because behind it all, I want our ministry to be successful, and I want us to be able to reach people, and it's different from trusting me as a son to trusting me in this position that has an intricate part in the direction of the ministry. So, kind of two dynamics there. So, of course, he trusted me as a son, but he began to know me more as a force in the ministry that had good ideas and a passion to really drive the ministry forward, with also elevating certain areas and not wanting to harm the ministry in any area, whatsoever, but really pushing the ministry forward. And, once he was able to lock in on that, and again, to his credit, like you said, he trusts me and gives me the freedom. And now I still have that oversight of him and, have that checks and balances, but he gives me that freedom to say, son, I trust you. What do I need to do and what do we need to do to make this happen? Yeah.
So what was the first things that you did when you started? Just I'm trying to think on the practical side. Like, what was the vision, and how did that come about?
I call it when I talked before, I call it the TV approach. So in our lobby areas of our ministry, we had bulletin boards. So, the bulletin boards where if you wanted to update the announcement, you would go to the store and buy the C and the D and put the letters together and staple them on the bulletin board, and that's how we present it. But with the full scope of what I know I was looking at of rebranding the church, I didn't want to lie to my customers as I see it. So I didn't want to rebrand with this innovative branding and then they walk into the church and it's totally different. So I knew that what they saw, whether that be on the internet or what they heard on what they saw on the live stream, when they walked into our grounds of our church, it needed to match. So the branding needed to be conceptual to where it flowed throughout the whole ministry. So I took a bulletin board down that was right outside the sanctuary and put a flat screen TV up. That was now the TV wasn't hooked up. Nothing was playing on it. But I did it on a Saturday, strategically on a Saturday, because I know we have church we have fellowship on Tuesday nights. So we have that break to where they come back on Sunday. So I wanted to have that effect of, okay, when did this happen? So did that on a Saturday, and I got there very early on that Sunday. So I can see the first one or two people walk in for our 8 o'clock morning worship. And I kind of stood in the hallway just to see the reaction. So, you have some reaction. Well, what's that for? Or, well, that's neat. We got a TV. And that was my first breadcrumb, as I call it. So, trying to get the reaction. What that did for people walking in is, okay, there's change taking place. I don't know what it is yet, but we're moving from bulletin boards to TVs, to flat screen TVs now. So that was my first thing to kind of get them to buy in. And again, it wasn't hooked up, and it was funny because it wasn't hooked up. I was trying to figure out how to put something on the screen. So we developed a DVD to kind of rotate, but I just know I needed something. But I needed something visual there. So when you walked, and if you had been there for 4 years or 2 years, you knew that something different was taking place. So that was my first breadcrumb, was that TV approach. So to take the old down and put something up that signified change. And from there, we moved into the sanctuary. We had pews in the sanctuary. So we had a lot of, my dad is a lover of plants. He loves flowers and plants. So we had our pulpit was pretty much what I like to call decked out with flowers and plants. So that was extremely, extremely hard because I knew for a live stream I wanted to present a certain way. So, what my studying was, I would look at other progressive ministries in different areas and see what was working for them, and to see how can I customize that to how we do ministry to make it work for us. And one thing I noticed, which was pretty synonymous across the board, was that I didn't see a lot of flowers and things on the stage. It was a clean stage with different lighting effect that really focused the attention on what it needed to be on. And I teased my father. I said, I feel like I'm in the Garden of Eden, walking through. I mean, it's just so much. And am I in a floor shop or what? So we had to. We removed that. So I started by removing one at a time. So I would remove one, and people would say things to me like, something's missing from the sale. No, it's really not. No, we're okay. It's just, so then I would remove another one, and then pretty soon they're like, it looks bad. It's just so empty. But I saw the overall where I was trying to get and trying to break them from what they were seeing. So we moved the flowers, and at the same time we were working on the pews. So we had kind of a hardwood type of floor in the church, and it was more so towel. We had towel in the church. It was really loud, and we had the pews in there. So I took out one pew, and we bought some chairs, which you see in a lot of the churches now, but bought the cushion chairs and just put one row of cushion chairs. The next Sunday, they saw another pew taken out, and we put cushion chairs. On the finance end, what we asked for people to do, again, I'm involved in, a lot of those areas, is we asked our parishioners to purchase a row. So we start doing that. And my key to that, which they know it now, so I can say it now, was I already had the seats purchased. So in effect, when we raised that money on a Sunday, each Sunday, purchase a pew, the parishioners saw chairs being put in. So what that did for the minds of the parishioners, I believe, and from the feedback I've gotten, this is the concept that I came up with, that when they gave, the next Sunday they saw results. So if I'm able to show the parishioners results after asking for something, it gives them that feeling of they're really using and I'm really making an effect. So each Sunday we would just do a row, take a pew out, put another row in, and then, pretty soon they saw that the pews were gone, and we had all these cushion seats in, and then we got the carpeting in. So they saw the church really transforming. So it started from a TV, and they knew change was coming, and now they see these different changes taking effect, and they see the benefit of it. So now they're not complaining about sitting on hard pews. They actually have cushioned seats. And from there, we did a lot with media. And then the next part was when, I'm contacting Prasad Creative to say, okay, this is where we're at, and this is what I need help with.
So you needed to get some momentum built up, and so you basically strategically did some things to get that momentum. Was there ever a point where maybe there was an announcement made, or to hear this is what we're doing, something from the pulpit, or did your dad, Bishop Vaughn, did he actually say something about it at some point? How did that go?
Yeah, and he said the announcement came with the chairs. So we announced that we were going to be transitioning the sanctuary to more of a more multi-purpose use, and that once I sold it to my father, then in turn, of course, I had that buy-in from him. Then they're hearing it from leadership, and that's why we go back to how important it is for the leadership to buy in, because the parishioners latch onto the voice of their leader. So if the leader says this is where we're going to go, and and has that passion behind it, they see that passion, they got behind that. So they got behind the chair. So he announced that, and so they knew that we were transforming the sanctuary around. And he didn't announce the flowers. I think he was still holding on to the plants. The chairs were easy, but he kind of stayed away from. I think that's something that just kind of happened, and people just saw the difference. But it's funny because one Sunday I came in and I saw another. I'm like, how did that get back up there? So I had to remove them from the building in general. But yeah, he did make that general announcement. So they saw the TV, But then they knew from the leadership that change was indeed coming in. We started with that sanctuary. So, it wasn't until after talking with you and starting those initial conversations with you that we really started to put the gas on the change and kind of really move forward at a fast pace.
Was there any pushback from anyone?
There were certain rumblings from parishioners that they didn't understand while we were doing it. And, when some people will understand when they're giving and, others will want to know, well, why are we using money for this? And because they don't see the need for change. You will always have those who will be comfortable the way things are. And a lot of people don't see the need for it until they see the positive results. And then they jump on the bandwagon. So we had those who, were in like maybe the first or second quarter, I will call it, that, the game is not, it's still even. And they say, I don't see why we're doing this. But then they see the game kind of picking up in the third and fourth quarter. And by that fourth quarter, crunch time, what are we doing next? They're all on board. So we had that pushback. And that was hard for me because, even though I'm not in the forefront of the congregation leading now, I'm the one that's in the forefront of the change and kind of really pushing the change. And, it made me question, because this is new for me. It's this feeling that I have that, this thing that won't let me sleep, that it's this passion that God has put in me. So when you're carrying that weight of it, when people say certain things, it's hard for you to shake that off. And then you have to revert back to, I know this is not a me thing. I know this is what I'm doing for God. And I know God has placed this in me to be able to benefit the ministry. So I just had to resort back to that. But yeah, we had those complaints, but it's God knows what you need. And for every one of those complaints, there were 5 people coming up to me saying, you're doing a great job, saying, I know it's you. I know it's you that's behind all this and you're doing a great job. So God knew when to send those people my way, and that kicked in, and that just kind of gave me the fuel to keep going.
Yeah, we did quite a bit. So you contacted myself. We came in. I remember that first time we sat down, we were talking about a website.
Yeah.
We talked about that somehow we got onto a logo and maybe redoing the logo. Mm-hmm. The logo you had, if I remember right, had a cross, a Bible, a dove.
Right, it had a lot. a lot going on there with that logo. Yeah, because my initial thought was, okay, we need a new website. And that's what I think. We need a new website. And, we had that initial meeting and the whole rebranding concept. I didn't know how to put necessarily verbiage and a definition to what I was doing. And then you kind of introduced, okay, we may need to rebrand here because you heard my passion and you said this goes beyond more than just a website. This is a total rebranding and a revamping we need to do of the ministry. And once I kind of caught on to that, that's when I just kind of went full force. So the initial idea was, okay, let's do a nice website. But it was, no, we need to rebrand to really get what you're wanting to get out of the ministry.
Yeah, so that rebrand was really interesting. We took out the religious elements to everything. So based on what you were saying you wanted to do, you now, instead of focusing inwardly on this club that has been built up, you wanted to focus more outward and reach out to people that were on the streets walking by. Mm-hmm. So it's the new logo is actually an E and a C, and it's nothing religious about it. The God message is basically after the fact. You come and you experience, and then you get the God message behind it. Right. And we moved on. We did some different things beyond the website and the logo. We did some stuff in the facility, put some signage up. Yeah. I think the big idea was we want to be a welcoming place. And your building is a beautiful building. It's got 3 levels to it, and but when you walk into it at first, it's hard to know where to go. Right. Where do I go take my kids or anything like that? So one of the first things I remember we did was after that logo and website, we did some signage in the facility. And we worked on the stage because you wanted it live stream. So then we redid the stage in the auditorium areas. Was there anything, I guess, in particular that stands out to you as, you got a big reaction from, or you yourself had a...
Yeah, it was the signage. So along with the signage, We had to, so that's, you have that first breadcrumb being the TV, and then you have the sanctuary removing the flowers and putting the seats. But the focus that I wanted to do was on customer service. It's funny how the church seems to be one area that the people want to come and expect it to be the same, but they miss the business element of it. So those strategic business elements of having exceptional customer service. So when your parishioners or your guests walk in, how do they know where to go? So, am I walking in your church and I'm standing at the front door with no idea where to go from there? And, we have the element of people having greeters, but how can I present good customer service without having to have anybody present? So signage was a big part of that. And even the first, the first kind of sign of that was a positive thing was actually doing a funeral. And we would have funerals a lot, and that people were not really familiar with our facility and where things were. So you always find people roaming around. Where's your bathroom? How do I get out? I mean, where's the sanctuary? Because it's a beautiful complex, very historic complex, but it lacked the customer service aspect of it, and that just warm feel. If I go into somewhere and I know where to go, it's a certain comfort that I have instead of being lost. So I didn't want people to feel lost. So the signage was big, and the other element to the directional signage was, how can I display who we are, and you get a good conceptual feel of this is who EC is by just walking into the facility. So, we did I got with you on the different signage of our missions. So that was one thing I want. If anybody walks away, if they walk away with anything from this worship experience, or if they're in the hallway just talking, I want them to know that EC is about missions. That's the thrust of what we do. That's what our focus is. So we did that signage in the hallways with the different communities that we worked with, the shelter, homeless shelters. And so when you walk into the hallways or walk downstairs, you go into the restroom, our message is the same of, this is who EC is. Also put the logo up in different places so that would stand out. And I like to refer to, and we laugh about this all the time. I often go to different places, whether that's a restaurant. Mike always says, I can tell where you've been because you're coming back with different ideas. But if you see a McDonald's arch, if you see the Apple logo, you know what that is. So that was the whole concept of not needing to put, I didn't feel like we needed to put a cross on anything or add a dove. I want when people see that EC to know this is what EC is. So I want that to transcend beyond the four walls of, you saw EC with a cross or a dove. This is a church. We're not just a church. We're a community of people who serve the community. So I wanted that to transcend to, we got into the clothing, and I guess we'll get into the apparel, and I wanted that to transcend to, to being able to put that on different products to be able to sell. And so that EC just fit, and it was, it says volumes of who we are based off of what we do, not what's all in the logo.
Right. We did a lot of stuff with your youth spaces as well.
Yes.
So one of the things that you'd mentioned is that, hey, we want to reach out to younger people, and one of the things we found is that people that are reaching out, churches that are reaching out to millennials, are the churches that are growing. Mm-hmm. Not that it's you shouldn't reach out to anybody else, but everybody wants to be young, and if you're older, you kind of gravitate to that naturally. So churches that are strategic about reaching out to younger people are the churches that are full of life.
Right.
And so we actually redid your youth space, a very traditional building itself, but we created a youth environment. So when teenagers walk in, they had a home, a place that was theirs.
And we wanted them to have ownership. And that was, before what we had was it was our chapel, and that's what it was. We had a smaller chapel in our facility that we would use for our chapel services, but it was very traditional in nature from the previous occupants of the facility that we purchased the church from. But we wanted the youth would have service in there, but they never had ownership of it because it didn't look like them. So, they were just in a space. doing something. So we wanted to give them their own space and ownership to walk in and say, this is mine and this is me. So we did different colors on the wall, put some signage up. I love black ceilings and kind of the modern feel of that. So we painted the ceiling black and did some black PVC pipes and painted those pipes black, and did the logos on the wall and painted the back wall black, and just kind of totally changed that around for them, and put new lighting in. So now they have their own space. Now I have to tug of war with the Sunday school class at times to let them know that is the youth space. But now the youth, when they come in, they take ownership and pride in knowing this ministry thinks enough about us to give us our own space. So we saw that result from the youth, and then the kind of directors of the children's ministry were like, you got to do the same thing for us. So we then moved to them and recreated a space for them that was initially our fellowship hall, but again, did repainting and did some graphics that were catered towards kids. And we also, got with you on creating our own children's ministry characters. So we have what we call KB Bear, and we have Deb the Duck are the two characters that we have right now, which Deb the Duck is based off of my aunt Deborah, who originally was kind of the person who started our children's ministry. And we have KB Bear, which stands for Kingdom Builders, which is the name of our Kingdom Ministry department, our children's ministry department. So we developed those. So not only do they have their own space, they have characters to connect with, and we can develop those characters later on down the line with children's books and things like that. So it's all of those small steps leading towards the bigger picture.
And after a while, we started to create this momentum. I think you talked about it a little bit. So we started with a few things and built up, and then at some point you came with the idea of like, hey, let's create a brand around our push to reach outwards. Mm-hmm. And so you came with this APMG initiative. Yeah. And so we created like a little logo that looks like the church logo, but it has a little more to it. Mm-hmm. So why don't you talk about the APMG initiative and kind of how that has grown and the impact?
Yeah. That started from a message my father was doing, and it wasn't the title or even a main part of the message. He mentioned it in his sermon, and I was in the back with the director of marketing at that time, and I said, man, that's catchy. All people matter to God is catchy and is universal. So whether you are, in church, whether denomination you are, that's something that people can gravitate to. Is just all people matter to God. So, went back home and it just stuck with me. I was like, why can't I shake this? And I said, well, let me try something. So we put it on a T-shirt, and it was a very generic T-shirt that had all people matter to God, had my father's name on it, and had our website. So we did that and printed off a few of those. So, we had a few people wear them, but, my youth and young adults are like, I'm not wearing that. And I'm like, why? Why not? Because it wasn't attractive. It was more so just a kind of, advertising shirt for the church. So it wasn't attractive. So I said, how can I change this? And this when I got you involved, Michael, to make this really attractive. So it's a nice shirt that people just want to wear in general. So we shortened up the All People Matter to God and really created an acronym, APMG. So that was catchy. It rolled off the tongue good. So I said, let's try that. And let me work with, Michael on a design. So I looked at different designs online, what was catchy and what was trendy. So we created that T-shirt, and we put that out there for sale and sold out the first Sunday. And we generated about 80 to 90 shirts, and we sold all of them out. So not only, I'm thinking, well, let's just see if it catches on, but it was revenue stream coming in for the church as well. So, then I had people coming back. I wore it in the mall, and somebody said they wanted one. They wanted this. So from there, and this is what I mean by the full force, we had a bookstore that we just sold books out of. So here comes Justin again wanting to change things. So totally revamped that store took all the books out and just made that general our APMG clothing store. So we turned that into our hub, and we would do new shirts. So we moved into hoodies, and everybody just started catching on and buying that. So it became it kind of grew legs on its own. So then I said, well, let's spin off of this APMG and make this the face of our missions. So our APMG initiative, to where all people matter to God, and no matter who you are, what race, what gender, what anything, no matter what your belief system is, we love you. And we wanted to spread the message of love without judgment. So that's really the basis of all people matter to God. And that took, we developed the APMG initiative, which now is the face of what we do in our missions. And APMG then became, along with EC, the brand of the church. So Evangelistic Center, you think of all people matter to God.
Oh, very good. Yeah, I love the evolution of that. And I also love the way that has become a very unique part of your ministry. Mm-hmm. So the gospel is the gospel. That doesn't change. But people respond differently in different ways. So in the culture of your church and your area, people really responded to these T-shirts. Mm-hmm. And so you just went with it. You saw that was what was happening. So then you created this thing, mm-hmm. The initiative, which then got people engaged in the community to feed homeless people or do some of the things that you were doing in the area, clean up the city blocks around mm-hmm. the area. All those different things. You even created a website and provided the clothing online to where other people can get it. Mm-hmm. And then the cool thing about that is that you're showing like the work that the church is doing through the website. Like right. The fact that you guys are out in the streets doing stuff, that's part of the website. Mm-hmm.
And a big inspiration for that was Tom Shoes, and we did heavy studying on him to look at that and draw that inspiration. And it's just the overall picture of going outside the four walls and being more. It's not enough to meet on Sunday and Tuesday and not take the gospel out to people who really need it and who really need to hear the word of God. And I think my grandfather was big on his key saying was love makes the difference. And that was his quote that people know him by. And, just to spread that love and that general message that, you matter to God and you matter to us. So, and tying in because it all ties in, and it's wonderful how everything ties in together. The EC branding and that, what that being about, not having a cross or anything. We're not trying to necessarily push anything on you. We just want to push love. And I believe if we exemplify love, the power of God and things has enough power to do what it needs to do. So that will do the rest. But we need to push love. And my grandfather would say that, no one wants to know how much you know until they know how much you care. So, we just want people to know that we care, and then we can, speak the gospel to them. And he used to use the example with, you can't go to a homeless man that's hungry and you're preaching to him, feed him first, give them something to eat so they actually can hear what you're saying. So that's kind of the thrust behind what we do in our missions is, all people matter to God again, and just spreading that word and the gospel and being more than just a church, being a community of people.
So can you speak to the results that you've seen? I mean, we've talked about it kind of around it, mm-hmm. but is there any specifics that you can share with us of how the people of the church have responded to this change? We have
the biggest, if I had to describe it in one word, and I'll expound on this, is excitement. We went when I initially started with the first Bear Crumble, the TV. I didn't feel that the excitement was there. I remember when I was, I went back to the teenage years where it seemed like everywhere you went, people knew who EC was. And Bishop Vaughn, that's the church on. I mean, they're really doing this, and they have awesome music, and they have this, and I didn't feel like we had that same buzz. And I think the reason why we lost that because we didn't evolve with the culture, we didn't evolve with the time, so we stayed the same. So once people saw, and the parishioners and visitors saw things changing, and we were what I call catching up. They were excited, but I'm like, we have so much more to do. That excitement came back, and that buzz came back, and then you have, we dove into social media and really working with you on, okay, this is how we are strategic about social media. We got heavy into videos. We used to just post things, but we got heavy into professional pictures and doing actual video. And now if you look at social media, all you have is video. It's a lot of video. So just studying, where the culture was and where the world was with technology, and trying to make sure we're in line with that and not behind the curve, but on the curve with the way things are moving. So the excitement came back and the youthfulness came back. So I started to see more young adults visiting, more young adults bringing young adults. So we were this vibrant ministry again that seemed to be on the edge, and we still are on the edge of, what's innovative and keeping up with things. And even from, we went from, you had to be there on a Sunday to give to, with the new website, creating online giving, mobile apps, and text to giving. So, the excitement is there, and it went from hesitation to what's next, Justin. So now I can't keep up with the demand necessarily to what they want to see. So it's disappointing to them if they don't see something new happening. So if it's not anything new in the church, what are we doing new with technology? Or, we went to doing series with the teaching, and now, as you mentioned before, alluded to, we're doing, series videos. So we're able to push those on Facebook. And, the first one we showed, there was a standing ovation in the church. I mean, they're just so excited. So that excitement is back. It has given a new source of energy to our ministry. And, now it's just a matter of staying on top of things and, doing new things, which, I have a team now. So it's not only, and I think this is important to mention, not only Justin now, I have a team of people who share the same passion that God has brought to the ministry to help carry this out. Although one person may have initiated it, it's too much for one person to bear and carry on. So God has provided that support system of people. So now we, it's full force, and now it's who the ministry is. It's the identity of the ministry. So we have totally changed from this traditional church to now we're an innovative ministry that other ministries are looking at to say, how can we do this? How did you do this? And although we still have a lot more to do, we're not at all an elite ministry, but we are a ministry who is taking the right steps in the right direction. So it's exciting to see that, to go from being the ministry that was behind to the ministry that has aggressively caught up to where things are. And now we're a help to other ministries in the same predicament.
Yeah, our company works with several churches, lots of churches in this particular area. So I remember when we've been working with this church for a little bit years ago, and you were checking them out.
Yeah.
Because we did some things, and you were checking out what we did over there. And now, just even recently, I'll go to that church, and they're like, "Man, have you seen what EC has done?" Yeah. or a different church, and you're like, "Man, EC, did you see what they're doing?" Or whatever. So yeah, you're right. And even as I'm bouncing around from different churches, it's cool within the circle of churches anyway that you guys really are. You're very influential now.
Yes.
I think Bishop Vaughn has found new influence in his circle of people that different pastors from the area or even around the country.
Right. Because
he's been making a lot of these changes.
Yeah, and a lot of people are looking to us and looking to him that are in, and you may have young pastors who have taken over a church from, maybe an older gentleman, maybe it's a father, maybe it's a grandfather. So they're trying to kind of breathe that breath of fresh air into the ministry. But you may have people that are still holding on to the old. So they're looking at a young man, I'll call him, but he's a lot older and a father figure to them. For one, and I'll kind of go in a different direction. You have those who have sons just like me that are coming up, but they're looking at my father saying, well, you did it. How were you able to kind of let go a little bit and let your son operate in his gift? So it's different areas. You have those who look at him as a father figure and those who are just saying, how did you do it? My son is saying these things, and, you have those sons who are now contacting me saying, man, I'm trying to do the same thing that you're doing. And your father is helping my father let go and kind of allow me to make these changes because he's seeing the benefit that it's having on you. So I think that's what, when you go home at the end of the night, and when you're spending that time with God and constantly talking to Him, saying that's what it's about ultimately, is not only helping EC, but helping other churches be more modern. It hurts me and my father. It hurts me when we, if we drive past or we hear about a church closing, or a church had to shut its doors, because that's years of history and years of parishioners giving their time and years of prayer and all of that for those doors to shut. To me, when a door shuts to a church, that's something that's another church that the community is missing out on, that could have helped the community. The church is for the community. So we want to help churches have that longevity, and we're trying to have that ourselves, and we're focused on that. But 10 years from now, how can this move from this was my grandfather's church to this church has evolved to now it's my church? In 10 years from that, how can we move from this is not Justin church anymore? When I have kids, it's their church. So to continue to evolve to where we stay relevant to generations, and we can carry the message on, change the methods, but the message is the same, that God is the living God, and that we want to spread love throughout the community.
So is there anything specifically that you're going to be working on next in the upcoming months or year?
Yes. I like to say I'm like an artist that has music for 5 years down the road. So I have ideas. It's just a matter of taking those steps to make sure we implement them right. But, we're looking at expanding and branching off to satellite ministry. Don't know when that'll happen. That's something we're trying to take strategic steps to doing, but also doing more things for the community. We've recently just one of the houses that we've owned for a number of years, we've altered that and renovated that to be a transitional home as a part of our missions outreach. So we had our first family in there this is something that's brand new that we started, a homeless family, and they benefited from that transitional home. We sent them to financial literacy classes and different things like that. And now that family has purchased a home of their own. So that's a kind of success story that we have there. So we're doing a lot of things in the community and working on different things with different community official and government officials to see what we can do to benefit the community around us. So we're at a very good point with the ministry, and now our really focus is what we call 60-40. If we're 40% ministry, we want to be 60% outreach. So, whatever we do, we want that percentage and that large percentage to be, we have church, and yes, we are a ministry, but what we're known for is outreach and mission. So our really focus and our projection for the next 5 years is just to build the community and see what we can do in those areas, and really get heavily into that APMG initiative and really build our community up in the outreach.
Are there any tips that you can give on the you're a numbers guy, you work with budgets and different things like that, and that's always going to be a factor in what a church is able to do. Is there any insight that you can give to on the budgeting side of things?
Yes, that is to plan and prepare. I would say, because a lot of times you don't have that liquid cash just sitting there to be able to do a new website and do that. But I would say work with your budget and be strategic in however you work the finances, whether it's a Sunday by Sunday budget, whether it's a monthly budget. See what you need to do to be able to start small. So I would say strategically look at, this is how much we need to do to at least make minor change, and set the money aside to do that. And then once you see that, once your parishioners see that minor change, and you have to develop a culture of that. And so that's the part of, you can spend money on chairs and things, but unless you have the buy-in from the culture of your ministry, it's going to be a waste of money, because you're doing that, but you're not changing the overall aspect of ministry. So I would say the key is just to plan, start small, work with the budget, see what you can do. What is the minimum that you can do? Because you don't want to, you don't want a flat screen, but you can't pay the light bill. So, you want to be able to meet those basic needs of the ministry, but you can't be so concentrated on just paying the bills that you miss progressing the ministry. So there has to be a balance there, because you can pay the bills and have the bills paid, but if your church is going to shut its doors in 5 years, what difference does it make to pay those bills? So you want to balance out this is the operating budget of what we need, but let's do this. And I stand as a testimony, and EC is one that if you do that, and you may have to make sacrifices in certain areas and set that money aside to start making those minor changes to progress your ministry, then your parishioners will buy in, and then you will see an increase in what you have coming in, and God will, of course, God will make sure that happens. That He tugs on the hearts of people, but we have to do our job first. And once you see that increase, you'll see that the money being spent is bringing more money in for you. So, I would say doing that. And one thing I always encourage churches to do is if you want to make giving easy for your parishioners. So dealing with a budget, if parishioners have to come to your facility or, just to give, I want if Michael's at work and he just got a check in the mail, somebody shook something in your hand, I want you to be able to give right then and there if you're thinking about it. So how can I make, and I got that from, I believe it was Staples, I had the easy button. So that's where that idea came from, and I grasped from everywhere. How can I make giving easy? How can I, make giving as easy as that easy button where they can just push it and they can be a blessing to the ministry? What we saw was if parishioners, they get paid on let's Friday, for instance, and they have to wait until Sunday to walk through the doors to give. That Friday night, the car, the tire went flat on the car, so they have to change that. Saturday, they may go to the mall, so they're spending. So even though we may be a first thought, they can't give us as a first option. So, when you get paid on Friday, now we tease you can pick up your phone and be a blessing to the church. So we wanted to not only be a first thought, but have the access for our parishioners for us to be a first option for that giving. So I would say, definitely look into online giving if you have not done that. And you have the options of text to giving, but, people are using their phones more for everything. So you want to have that access of being on that phone as well with everything else, with the Macy's and all that they're shopping with. You want your ministry to be right there so they can be a blessing to you as well.
I think one of the great things I've seen in working with you is that you work really well with the budget, and you get the experts to come in the areas where they're needed. Right. Yet you still have the people in the church that help out in other areas. Mm-hmm. So you're really good at identifying where do you need the professional help, so to speak, to do something. And I think that's a key component. I think to what you've done is recognizing that. Well, we've also worked with you. Sometimes you have a great idea, and the great idea costs a lot of money. So then we'll be like, well, if we take this and this and this, and maybe we take those things out, the essence of the idea might be there. Maybe it's for a video. Right. Maybe it's for a room redesign. We've done redesigns where we're using just same idea concepts. We're doing the same stuff, but we're using maybe a cheaper material. Or just, or on a video, we're cutting the drone, right. the drone shot, but we're still getting the big idea in there. So that's been a good process, I guess, being willing and able to work within the budget.
It has been, and you generally when you start out with an idea, and I get that honest from my father, he's the same way. And it's funny now that he's on board, he comes up with ideas, and I'm trying to scale him down. Like, I don't think we can have Denzel Washington in this series promo. I don't think that's optional, but have to scale him back. But a lot of times when you have ideas, it's an idea, which is good. But what I do is I bring the idea to the professionals, whether that's in the finance area or whether talking about the marketing, I'll bring that to Michael and say, this is what I want to do. And, you give me that figure back. And then, we say, well, maybe I don't want to do all of this. And how can I get the same essence from what I want to do just for a cheaper price? And even if that price, I'm looking at that. And if I'm sure that's something that we need to do to progress, and then it's a thing where I say, Michael, okay, we may not be ready to do this right now, but let's keep this on the docket give me about a month, and I have a plan to get this done. So then I take that back to the finance board and say, this is what I want to do. This is what I think we need to do, and sell that to them. And then we plan out a way to make that happen so we're not putting the church budget at jeopardy. Time often allows you to, or should allow you to, plan accordingly. So you're taking little pieces out of that budget so it's not hitting you all at once. And the next thing you know, you have a kind of a nice pile to work with and do what you need to do.
Yeah, very good. So, what is there any tips or anything else that you can give to anyone listening that would help them out? So, I know you've mentioned a few things in the past, like some things that you've maybe a book you've read, conference you've went to. Are there maybe two or three things that you could say, hey, check this out; it'll change the way you think?
I think one conference that really kind of changed my perspective on even how we our programming, our church programming, and our Sunday programming, and the way we conducted our services was the Catalyst Conference. And actually, you turned me on to the Catalyst Conference and told me about that. Told me about that conference. So I went to that was in Dallas, and I went to that conference, and the speakers there were really just life changing for me. And I believe the kind of title of the conference was Changers. It's something about changers. So, they had a lot of different speakers, but even from the way the worship service was, I took that idea back and we changed the way we worship as far as the way we present worship, and we totally cleared the stage out and went to the more worship atmosphere, the way we do things. So that really helped me. And one of the key things I would say is research what you like. So, it's not really not a benefit to try to reinvent the wheel. Look at a ministry that's doing what you think that you want to do or that you can grasp from, and figure out how to customize that. And I haven't reinvented anything. I've just customized a lot. So I've looked at different ministries, whether that's websites that I work with you and said, this is what I like, what I saw them doing as far as their services, walk into I've tried to get out more to different ministries to see what I can gather from, and not just churches. I bring in the Smoothie King ideas and the Chick-fil-A ideas to the ministry. So everywhere I go, I'm looking at, okay, how do I feel when I walk in? What do they have? And you know what? I can change this. And, I looked at the history of Chick-fil-A that they had, and we did the history wall in our ministry, kind of leading up to the foundation. Well, starting with the foundation where we're at now. But I would say gather information from different ministries and look at what your ministry offers, what your ministry is as a culture, and figure out how you can customize that. So be open to new ideas. And if you go into McDonald's and you see something that will work, always have an open eye. I mean, be totally outside the box. No one would ever think to go in Chick-fil-A and come up with an idea for ministry, or think to go into Smoothie King and get a smoothie and say, I think this will work for my church. So to look at the different aspects, but to see church and be in the one thing that I've taught on with different ministry is be intentional about everything you do. When we walk into ministry, when we do things at church, it should be for a purpose. So nothing should be accidental. Be intentional, from your customer service to your marketing to what you do. Be intentional about ministry and have a outcome that you want to see from everything, and you'll be successful from there. So Be intentional.
That's really good. Just to kind of hit on a couple things that you mentioned, you do get ideas from all over the place. We actually did a room in the church, kind of based off of Chick-fil-A, I think, where it's a visitor center.
Yeah.
So the idea is, like, if you want visitors, create a space where they're welcomed. And so people are able to go into this little space, and there's like refreshments, there's information about the church, there's all these graphics around on the wall just showing the ministries of the church and the history of the church. And so there's the whole environment that we created. And I remember, I don't know how many times you pull out your phone, you're like, hey, Michael, check out what I just saw. Or I get a text or, something from you, and it's, Yeah,
and that visitor center was very powerful. And I would say, honestly, that is one of the most, the biggest thing that I've done. And not necessarily the biggest project, but the biggest impact. And it actually was a Acura dealership that I got that from. And I took the story is I took my wife's Acura to Acura dealership. Now we live in Edwardsville, Kansas, which, it's about 15, 20 minutes away from the dealership. Now we passed two different Acura dealerships on the way to that one. And, and I'll get to that point where I asked my wife, which was so powerful what she said, but which totally just changed my mindset of things. So I went to the dealership and I was just going in for an oil change. My wife does not have a new Acura by any means necessary. So it's an older vehicle, and I went in for an oil change. And, the attendant at that time, that took my information, said, well, is this your first time here? And I said, yes, it is. So she said, let me show you to where our waiting area is. So she walked me back to the waiting area, and it was, they had like lounge chairs, had the Wi-Fi, had TVs. And she walked me up to a young lady that was behind the counter with refreshments and said, this is Justin Vaughn. He's here getting an oil change, and he'll be here for about an hour. Can you make him please feel comfortable and get him what he needs? So she handed me off to that young lady, and that young lady, they had a very short menu, but like a grilled cheese and things like that, and free refreshments and soda. So she said, would you like anything? And she got me something to drink, and I sat down in a nice, comfortable chair until my vehicle was done. And I called my wife, and I was like, why do you drive all the way out to that Acura dealership when you pass so many on the way there? And she said, it's the customer service. And she said, it's the way they make you feel. Now she has it was not a new Acura. It's a lot of miles on it, but as a customer, I didn't feel any different as if I was an elite customer. So they made me feel special. And that really, Michael, it really grasped a hold of me. And I said, how can we make our visitors feel that special? So we took what was office space and we sacrificed office space. We had a nice big office space that I was in, that Deacon Fields at that time before his passing was in. And we uprooted everybody, made them uncomfortable, made me uncomfortable in a smaller office that I was sharing with someone else. But we put the emphasis on our visitors. So we want you to feel so special as a visitor that we have this space just for you. You worked with us on the branding, as far as putting the branding on the visitor's bag. And we developed a visitor's booklet that highlighted our ministry. We developed the cups that have our logo on it. So everything was EC. So we send them home with something. And I remember you saying, Justin, if we do something as far as a handout to them, let's make it so nice that they can't just go home and throw it away. So let's make it not like a brochure that you put on the windshield when they get out of church. Let's make it really nice that they want to hold on to it. So we invested a lot of money into those items to give to our visitors. So now it's not, and that's what I mean by being intentional. So now that's intentional, that we know when they go, we dismiss them before service, that the bishop and the pastor and the staff have a chance to really touch those visitors and really get a chance to meet them. And the feedback we've gotten is a lot of people come and say, I've never been to a church before where I'm able to meet the bishop in a special space like this. I'm able to meet the pastor and him greet me and hug me and really get a chance to talk to me. So that has had the biggest impact on our ministry. And we've seen a lot of return visitors and a lot of that visitor retention. So that turns in from a visitor to a person that's coming every Sunday. Then they join, and what it does for the finance people, which of course I'm a finance person, is in turn that turns into giving units. So then you have this repetitive cycle starting, but it was so powerful. So we're intentional about our customer service. So we have people that drive from Topeka and we ask them the same question, why are you past so many churches, and Topeka's about an hour away from where our ministry is? Why are you coming here? And it's the way you make me feel. So we're not in competition by any means with any church, but quite naturally, if you're going to choose a church, we want you to choose us. We want you to choose our ministry, and we want to be intentional about why you choose us. And I'm glad you mentioned that visitor center has been the biggest thing that we've done that has the greatest impact. And, we have the signage of the different ministries. So when they leave that visitor center, they leave with product to take home that they can use for drinking material. They can put water into the cup. They have this nice booklet of what our ministry is. And they have this presentation of this ministry that I haven't seen done before, at least in this area. So, even the gift bag is one that you would get if you went to the mall. That's where I got the idea from. I want something nice. I want them to feel like they're going to Saks Fifth or something when they walk away. So they have this presentation of who our church is. And when other people see that, they just see our branding, and that's like, wow, that church really puts a lot of emphasis on visitors in the way I feel when I come in. So that's been the greatest monumental thing, is that visitor center, which just came from me getting an oil change at an Acura dealership and taking that back and say, if they made me feel this way, I want to be intentional about our visitors feeling this way at our ministry.
Man, thanks for unpacking that. That was real good. I think there's a lot of value. You got the idea from somewhere else. You implemented it in the church context. and then the results that you're seeing. I keep on trying to wrap it up, but there's one more thing I think is worth mentioning. You guys changed your announcements to do something different that your church has never seen before, and basically you're doing video announcements.
Right.
And we just introduced that idea to you, and then it took a little while, but eventually you're like, okay, let's start doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you telling me that announcements would go on for quite a while, which in the flow of the church. So that solves some issues or some some time issues within the context of a Sunday service. So just talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, our announcements before was, we would have, so service would end, and you're at the end of service, I'm sorry. So you have someone come up and say, and, you almost felt like and I forget what movie, feel like you're watching The Cafeteria Lady or something. You sit someone and this is what we're going to do today, and this is what we're doing this week. So it wasn't a good time of service that I was like, oh my God, announcements. So what we saw was we would do announcements, and we were spending money on these announcement bulletins to give to people. But 15 minutes after church down, what are we doing next week again? So we didn't have their attention. So we were spending that attention, and it's like, how can we progress this? Now, this was something that wasn't new. Other ministries were doing this, maybe not in the particular area, but around we're doing this. So we would have people that have, we had one lady who relocated to Dallas, Texas, and she came back to visit, and she kind of put you put the original seed. And that's when I said, well, we may want to go ahead and do this. She came back and she said, we really need to do video announcements. So she, kind of put that bug in my ear and said, you really need to look into that. That would probably help. So we worked with you on that. And I wasn't hesitant about the idea, but it's just about putting it together. So I was like, how is this going to work and how is this going to look? So we did that. And I remember the first Sunday. I remember it like it was yesterday. They were expecting someone to walk up. So we dimmed the lights and played the announcements. And again, this round of applause. So I'm like, okay, we can't stop it now. So I'm like, okay, we have to find some way to keep this going. So what we did with our announcements is we would just play them in service. And actually, my brother, who was actually on the staff at the church, he said, man, you really need to put this on Facebook too. So we start posting our announcements on Facebook. So it went from that to, okay, let's not do traditional announcements. Let's do some comedy and let's put some jokes in there. So we start adding that, and then we had this hysterical reaction of everybody laughing during service. So what we saw when we posted that to Facebook, that people will comment and share and say, you got to see, the end part of this and watch it to the end. It's funny. So we're getting this traction on Facebook of announcements. So what that does is not only it draws more attention to your Facebook page, of course, but people are seeing all these different aspects of your church. So who knew that announcements can turn into a marketing aspect for people to say, wow, that's a really neat church. So, it goes from, okay, this church does video announcements to it presents this innovative, again, ministry that is doing things that are in tune to what's going on. So, and what it did for our young adults like myself is my church gets it. We're finally that church that gets it. We get what it takes to move this thing forward. So, now people look forward to our announcements, and they'll come up to me and say, Justin, when are you going to do a joke again? I mean, we really need that. It's good to be able to let your hair down. Everybody's so serious. We need to laugh. So now they're looking, and I think we have another one coming up here this Sunday coming up, a Father's Day joke, but leading up to Father's Day. But, they're looking for that. Like, we really miss that. So, they've really, and it's, all praise be to God for this, but it's great to see that everybody again is just so on board now, and it's such a drastic turn from where it was 5 years, even 3 years ago. Now everybody is so on board, and it's like, whatever we want to do next, let's do it, because we're excited about what it's going to be. So the announcements have, it shows you, if you use and you're intentional about using things the right way, they can have a big impact. Even the littlest thing that you would not, something like video announcements can give you, if you use it the right way with social media, which, you've been intricate in working with us on that, with social media, whether that's Instagram, and you use all those different tools the right way, it can have a big impact for your ministry.
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot, and we've unpacked a lot, and I didn't want to stop it because I think it's so valuable from where you've come to now where you are, and some of the results that you're seeing and experiencing. Your Facebook is one of the most like active Facebooks that I've seen. We'll see videos, and then thousands and thousands of people are sharing, and so thousands of people are seeing it because of that. So it's very active. So the culture of the church has really got on board with a lot of this stuff. I'd like for people to be able to connect with you and follow you and kind of see some of the stuff you're talking about. Can you share maybe your Facebook and any other social platforms that?
Yeah, and you can actually, the best way to reach me on, if there's social media, is just to go to the Evangelistic Center Facebook page and maybe leave a note there. You can go to the ecinternational.org, the church's website. I'm kind of in the managing part of all of it, so it gets to me whether another staff member sees it or not. And you can, my email, jvaughn@ecinmks.org. You can reach me there, but I'm open to whatever I know, and I don't consider myself knowing it all, but one thing I do know that is undoubted is my passion for ministry and my passion to help people. So in whatever way I can be of assistance as far as what we've seen and what I've seen and what I've had to do to transition our church to where we're at now, and even my ideas about where we're going, I'm happy to share that.
Excellent. And I know you've helped a lot of people today, so I know that what you've shared is going to open some eyes and help make some of this stuff a very practical, like, hey, I can do that type of thing. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for spending all this time with us on the podcast. It was fun. My pleasure. All right, Justin, thanks again. And I'm sure we're probably going to have you back. Well, I'd like to get your dad back on.
Soon.
Maybe get your dad to talk about all this stuff.
That'll be an interesting flip of the coin on the other side of that story. So, yeah.
All right, thanks again. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
I want to thank Justin for coming on the podcast once again. Man, he really brought some great information, and I hope this provides some good inspiration if you're thinking about rebranding, or maybe you're in the process of just creating a better brand for your church. Hopefully this helps you maybe take some practical steps towards that. So thanks, Justin, for telling your story, and I know it'll be a great help to our audience. So every time that we do a podcast, I like to present a resource, usually a book that is going to help you on your journey. This week, I want to present the book called Good to Great by James Collins, and he basically talks about companies that have gone from good to great over a period of time. They've established sustained greatness. So yeah, this book is talking about businesses and companies, but the principles in the book definitely apply to churches and any organization that you can imagine, nonprofits, churches, businesses. A couple great principles he talked about was the flywheel principle. Basically that it takes a lot of energy and effort to start something, but once it gets going, there's a great deal of momentum that just keeps it going, and the energy needed to sustain it is not as much as what it is to start it. So you're going to have to be ready to push and push at the beginning, but after a while, that's not going to be necessary to keep it going. So if you're going to rebrand something, if you're going to create a new brand like we're talking about today, be ready for that push. It's going to need a great deal of effort at first, but after a while, people will get on board and there'll be a momentum behind it. And then you can start to focus on other things, bigger things. The other principle, just to point out from this book, is the hedgehog principle. And that is basically the idea of becoming the best in the world at something. So he talks about some businesses that became the best in the world at something that they did. Walgreens became the most convenient place that you can go to. They would build their stores on the corners and only on the street corners, like where there's a major intersection. And they became the best in the world at something. And then Jim Collins just basically was talking about in any business, you can become the best in the world at serving your audience. And you can narrow that down as much as you need to become the best in the world. But it's a great challenge and a great way to look at things as you move forward. So you can become the best in the world. Maybe it's serving your community in a specific way and become really, really good at it. Lean into your strengths and become great as a result of that. So again, the book is called Good to Great. The author is James Collins. It's definitely a book that you should check out as a church leader, and it's going to help you a great deal. So one other thing I want to let you know about is that we are launching our webinar on June 21st. So we're going to be talking about branding and marketing with Ryan Wakefield. It's a live webinar where you can provide any of the questions that you have, and we'll try to answer every question that we can within the allotted time. But it's a great interaction, kind of a back and forth. So I want to invite you to come and be a part of that webinar. And just all you have to do is go to our website at churchbrandguide.com and then sign up for the webinar, and you'll be invited to it and get the link to where you can attend it. So that's going to be a great thing that we can do to hopefully serve as many churches as possible. Just another way that we can help to get the information principles out there, and also make it more specific to your situation. So please join us on that. You'll get the invite if you did the survey. There's a marketing survey that we have on our website and that we have just let you know about over the last several weeks. So if you haven't taken the survey, make sure you do that. You're going to need to take a survey in order to be invited to the webinar, because it's kind of based off of those answers on the survey. So take that survey just on our website, churchbrandguide.com. Join us on a webinar on June 21st. It's going to be a great one, and I know you'll enjoy it quite a bit. Thanks for joining me today, and I'd love to hear from you. If you could leave a comment on the blog itself, there's actually a comment section at the very bottom of every blog post, every podcast episode. There's a blog entry for it, and at the very bottom of that blog entry, there's a comment area. So I love hearing from you, hearing your questions. I've even made some phone calls to some people so that we can answer your questions directly. So make sure you contact us on the website, and I'd love to hear from you with any questions, comments that you have. Thanks again for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.